Got it. Coming to last couple of questions here. Let's talk about commitments, and this is something that again is something that I struggle with. I wanted to understand the difference between high integrity commitment and low integrity commitment. And but before you answer that, let me read out what I really liked in the book. You said in all businesses there are occasional situations where something important must be delivered by a specific deadline date. The deadline might be a major industry trade show, or it might be a partner driven date due to a contract, or a calendar driven date due to tax days or holiday period, which is understandable. Realize that one of the main reasons leaders gravitate towards command and control model of management, especially with old style roadmaps, is precisely because of this need to know when important things are going to happen. And I understand the anxiety of the management. So help us understand when can we commit something with high integrity and when not to,
Well,
especially on roadmaps.
there's two parts to this. One is which things really should have a high integrity commitment, and the other part is then how do you do them if you're going to have them. So remember, the other thing you didn't quote, but it is in there several times, is high integrity commitments should be the exception, not the rule. In other words,
wow.
if
That's
everything
important.
is a high integrity commitment, then nothing is a high integrity commitment, really. So you need to be sure, there are not that many things that really need a date and a deliverable. And it's important that leadership understands that these are not cheap. When you ask a team to do a high integrity commitment, there is time and effort required just to come up with that commitment. So they need to understand it's not free. But again, the teams need to understand that this is the real world. There are cases where you need this. Now, the second part of this is, okay, it's something we know we need. Fine. How do we do it? The team needs to do enough product discovery in order to address those risks of value, usability, feasibility, and viability. And normally for a high integrity commitment, the biggest open risk is feasibility. We don't know how long it's going to take to build. You can ask your engineers to guess, and you can play silly games like story point games, but you're crazy if you trust that. Because again, a high integrity commitment is not, that's like you deliver that. So it means that you have real evidence behind this estimate. And what that normally means is that the product team, the engineers, were able to create a feasibility prototype. Feasibility prototype doesn't look like any of those prototypes you looked at before in Vision. Feasibility prototypes are for a very different purpose. They're a very different kind. They're mostly code fragments. But the point is, the engineers have to look into the technology enough to know what they don't know. They have to discover the uncertainties, the things that everybody's seen this, where, the engineers think something will take a month, 3 weeks, something like that. And then, 3 months later, it's still going. And, it's like, yeah, we keep finding more things. And you're like, when is this thing ever going to be done? The reason that happens is because that was a feasibility risk, and it was not investigated in discovery. If the team had done a feasibility prototype, they would have found those lurking issues, and they would have said, oh, this is a much bigger problem than we thought. And this is going to require this tech debt system addressed, this issue addressed, and it's going to be like 3 months. Are you willing to do 3 months? And if the answer is yes, then fine. The team can say, we will deliver this in 3 months. And they know that it's 3 months, instead of just saying, well, at my last would have been a couple weeks, so it's probably going to be a couple weeks here.
Then how do these best product companies come up with their roadmaps? Are they not time bound, or do they get rid of roadmaps completely? What's the way out?
Well, I mean, it's complicated. There's the roadmaps themselves are not the problem. Roadmaps done without product discovery are the problem. So long as the done to figure out the items on the roadmap, then it's fine. The issue is, so it's, in fairness, I should say there are two kinds of roadmaps out there. In my experience, the vast majority of them are conventional roadmaps, which mean projects and features. And those are, that's easy to define. The question is, will they actually solve the problem? Now, there's plenty of evidence today to show that about 2/3, 3/4 of the time, they don't. So the items on those roadmaps are wasted. The alternative roadmap tries to address this, and it does work, which is called outcome-based roadmaps. And if you read any of the literature on modern roadmaps, they're trying to push you to outcome-based roadmaps, which instead of putting features, put problems to solve. So that's great, but that doesn't really address the issue of a high integrity commitment. But it does address the issue that, we could build this feature but not solve the customer problem. Is that success or is that failure? So it's a little complicated, but I will say this. Roadmaps in a good organization are a lot less important. At Amazon, speaking of them from before, they like to emphasize, be stubborn on your product vision, but flexible on the details. Roadmaps are details. So you want to be flexible. If you put dates on a roadmap of features, that's not flexible. That's the opposite.
But you know what? There is the entire budgeting, there is the planning, there is the sales cycle who are depending on what the product teams deliver, isn't it?
How do you... only in bad companies, right? So, you're describing classic horrible enterprise software where unfortunately most of them still work that way. But that is not what we do. What we really focus on, there are techniques like the customer discovery program, which are meant to turn that around, to turn the focus onto the product organization, creating referenceable customers. So, you're describing a sales-driven company again from like the beginning, not the way a good company would work, not the way a Stripe would work or a good enterprise software company.
No, but then how would they plan revenues for a year, and like how would they budget, and how would they have any sense of control on what the next year revenues look like?
Well, look, there's a couple sides to this. One is, as far as the budgeting, it's really not a big change. Instead of budgeting based on funding projects, you instead fund teams. So the funding is not really hard. Even when they fund projects with all these fake business cases that make up revenue, nobody believes those because it's nonsense.
It's right? Definitely nonsense, but we still participate in the exercise.
Bad companies, you're describing bad companies very well. And that's what they do. And sort of they get what they deserve as far as I'm concerned, because it's been obvious for a long time that doesn't work. So instead, what we need to do is know what we can't know. And one of the things we can't know is revenue before we've actually proven customers will buy something. And we can't do that until we've demonstrated the value. So this says, again, most companies are not doing product discovery. They're just doing feature roadmaps. They're pretending these features will close these deals. And even if they close a deal, it doesn't mean the customer is going to use it or like it. It doesn't mean it's going to work for another customer.
So do you just raise your hands and resist this and say, you know what, we cannot commit if these features will solve the problem because we have not done discovery yet. These are just vague wish list. And maybe after we do the discoveries, half of this will be rejected. Okay. So is this what you just need to resist to the management and make them aware, or how is it?
Well, what you're describing is known as transformation. This is what it means for a company to transform. You're describing the from, I'm describing the to. And most companies have no real appetite for transformation. Right. Even when they think they want to, they don't know what it involves, and they really are scared to do it. But that's what That's what we're talking about, is transforming. And it's roadmaps are just one of many topics.
Right.
Like we've talked about before, moving from subservient teams to collaborative teams. That's a big one.
Right.